So here's what I think the Atlanta Falcons are going to do in the draft. And I've said for a few weeks now, when I did my mock draft last night, okay, I don't do it based upon what the Falcons are going to do. I don't do it based upon Terry Fontenot. I don't do it about Arthur Smith, Arthur Blank, anybody you want to associate with the Falcons organization. I do it based upon what I want to do, how I'm drafting if I'm in control of the ship, if I'm piloting the ship, okay? So what do I think the Falcons do? I think number one, they're going after a corner. And again, we saw Casey Hayward get cut. Yes, they have Jeff Okudah. I think they're going to go young corner first and foremost. Okay. Now, look, CJ Stroud could fall. Maybe they pick him, you know. I talked last time on a radio show about Peter King having Bijan Robinson as the number 8 pick. They could certainly do that. If you're talking about best player available, they could certainly go that route. But I think that when you look at whether it's Devin Witherspoon, whether it's Christian Gonzalez, they'll have their pick of one of those two guys, and those guys are the consensus 2 best corners coming into the draft. And I think when all is said and done, that you're looking at, you know, besides just Mike Hughes and Okudah, who we don't know a lot about, who we don't know whether it's Okudah because of injuries and things like that. Can he play? Can he stay healthy? That's why I think that they go corner when they pick in the 8th round or pick at number 8 in the first round of the draft. After that, I think they're going to draft a wide receiver pretty high. And I think that it could even be a second round pick at wide receiver. If they don't draft a wide receiver in the second round, then I'm looking at a defensive linebacker or edge player, somebody like a BJ Ojulari, Aziz's brother, right, who played at Georgia. I'm looking at somebody like that I think that the Falcons would target and find another pass rusher in the second round of the draft. And if they don't draft wide receiver in the second, I think by the third round, they're drafting a wide receiver. Like, they're not going to waste too many picks on drafting somebody other than a wide receiver. Like, they're going to draft a wide receiver pretty quickly here. Now, again, I know we have a lot of angst because they drafted pass catcher in the top 4, the top 8 the last 2 years, but I don't think they're going to monkey around and get too deep in the draft before they pick themselves a wide receiver. I think wide receiver is the play in the second or third round. Then after that, the Falcons don't, in this regime of the Terry Fontenot, Arthur Smith regime, they don't draft offensive linemen all that high. They haven't invested a first-round pick in an offensive lineman. It's all been pass catcher, skill people. But I do think that when you get to the third, fourth round, that's where the Falcons will dip their toe into the offensive line sweepstakes. No matter what that is, I could see guard, I could see center, tackle, whatever that is. You know, Jalen Mayfield was a third-round pick. So I think that when you look at this thing overall, that the middle rounds will be dedicated to your offensive linemen and your probably defensive linemen as well. You can always add one more pass rusher, one more defensive tackle, whatever, in the middle rounds of the draft, right? It's never too late to have one of those guys. I do think that they at some point take a flyer on a quarterback at the end of the draft. Now, I had Stetson Bennett in my mock and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it's Stetson Bennett. I don't know if it's Jake Haener, you know, maybe somebody like that. But I would not be surprised if they draft a young quarterback that isn't in line to pressure Desmond Ridder, but a guy that could probably be a practice squad guy, a guy that you could groom and mentor. And then in a year from now, if you don't feel confident about Desmond Ridder, could you have that guy groomed and ready to play? It would be a quarterback that probably wouldn't play a snap in the regular season. He'd see the practice squad and nothing else. He'd play in the preseason, but he'd be on the practice squad for all the year. And the only other thing that I think that the Falcons would look at is a running back somewhere in the later rounds. They hit a home run with Tyler Algier. And whether you want to tell me Cordero Patterson's on his last legs, Caleb Huntley is still out there, I think more than it picked number 8 in the first round. I think the Falcons, with the success that they had with Tyler Algier, they dip their toe in those middle to late rounds and find themselves a running back that they can groom and bring into the system. And maybe that's a guy that if Tyler Algier is RB1, maybe at some point you make him RB2 So take over for Cordero Patterson at some point in that RB2 spot, and then maybe play Patterson back a little bit outside. If this really is going to be his last maybe year in the NFL, or probably certainly with the Atlanta Falcons, maybe you use him in a different role. Maybe you use him on the outside. Maybe you put him in the slot. Obviously, he's been a receiver in the past, so it wouldn't surprise me if they draft a running back in that 4th, 5th, 6th, they don't have a 6th round pick, but 4th, 5th, 7th kind of round area, and groom him and see what a player like that has. Again, they hit a home run with Tyler Algier, and that was a 5th round pick. So I think that they look in that point. But I think cornerback is still the play at number 8. And if not, listen, we may all be surprised come tomorrow night and they take Bijan Robinson. And I'll be sitting here scratching my head like, okay, we've got 2 wide receivers and a tight end wide receiver and a running back, and we don't sack the corner. Okay, anyway, but we'll address all of that when we get to that point, right? We'll have that kind of frustration once we get to that point. So I think corner's the play at 8. I think wide receiver 2nd, 3rd round. I think a defensive end or tackle in the other spot. That's either if a wide receiver is picked 2nd, 3rd round, defensive end tackle. If a wide receiver is picked in the 3rd round, then edge player, defensive tackle in the 2nd. Those 2 positions will flip-flop. And then I think at some point it's a quarterback, and I think some point it's another defensive line player. Linebacker, edge player, defensive tackle, who kind of ever grades out the best of everything. So we'll see tomorrow night. It all starts tomorrow night. NFL draft. I'll have some reaction and response to whatever the Falcons do at number 8. Good, bad, or otherwise, we'll be commenting on it. And then, again, I'm going to be up in Flowery Branch on Friday night for the 2nd and 3rd round. I'm going to be broadcasting from their new Ticketmaster studios up there. So I'll have firsthand coverage of what's going on out there. So we'll see what happens, but it should be a fascinating weekend as we get ready for another NFL draft. And hopefully we find that defensive edge player that we've all been longing for. All right, well, thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with John Chuckery your first listen. Make sure when you listen into Hittin' Hard that you go in the comment section, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast from, and leave us a message that you are an everyday listener. We call them our everydayers, and we thank you so much for being a part of our community. Thanks for being a part of our audience, and especially thanks for being a part of this audience every single day that we are on air. So we appreciate it greatly. I ask you to follow me on my Twitter page at JMCH316. And of course, you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube and listen to wherever you find your podcast from. Get the latest episodes of Hittin' Hard as soon as they become available. We'll talk to you tomorrow night as we get ready for the NFL draft. John Chuckery, Hittin' Hard, Locked on Sports Atlanta.